Alright, so to unlock the new SSBN Submarine in Military Tycoon, you actually have to complete the event pass. The way you progress it is by holding armored fortresses and outposts around the map. Every time your team controls one of these locations, you earn points that go toward filling the pass. Once you finish it, the SSBN becomes yours. Now, let's start with the positives. At first glance, the submarine actually looks pretty decent. The overall shape is nice, and it has some cool little details that make it feel more alive. The stabilizers are there, the propellers spin in the back, which is a nice touch, and on top of the bridge you can see a pair of periscopes. Small details like that really help sell the vehicle. Moving on to the weapons. The SSBN comes with a torpedo that you can fire, but honestly the damage feels a bit underwhelming for something that's supposed to be a torpedo strike. It works, and the reload time is manageable, but I do feel like the damage could use a small buff. But the real highlight of this submarine is on the back. You've got 16 missile tubes, which is honestly pretty awesome. You can lock onto air targets, while ground targets need to be aimed manually. What makes this system really powerful though is the reload. It's brutally good. Once you start firing, you can basically keep a continuous barrage of missiles going, which makes the submarine extremely dangerous if you position it well. And one thing I really appreciate is the launch animation. When you fire, the tube door opens, the missile launches, and then the door closes again. That's a really nice detail, and it makes the whole system feel much more polished. Now, let's talk about the big issue I noticed. When you zoom in close to the submarine, it looks completely fine. The model is smooth, the shapes look good, and the textures are all there. But the moment you zoom out just a little bit, the submarine suddenly changes shape into a much lower poly version. And I mean significantly lower poly. It's a pretty noticeable visual jump, and it can look a bit strange while playing. Hopefully this is something the developers can patch, maybe by adjusting the LOD distance or smoothing out the transition between models. Overall though, the SSBN is still a really cool addition to the game, especially because of that missile system.
Now, before we move on, there's one small thing in Military Tycoon that has always bothered me a little bit, and that's the scale of the large ships. I'll demonstrate what I mean using the North Carolina warship right here. If you look at my avatar standing next to one of the main turrets, just look at those proportions. Something about it feels a bit off. Instead of feeling like I'm commanding a massive battleship, it almost feels like I'm piloting one of those large Revel RC model boats. Now don't get me wrong, I completely understand the problem the developers are dealing with. Real warships are absolutely enormous, and a true one-to-one scale ship simply wouldn't fit properly in many parts of the map. That makes total sense, but at the same time, the current size feels a bit too small to really sell the fantasy of commanding a battleship. Personally, I think even tripling the size of the ship would already make a huge difference while still keeping it manageable for the map. And, of course, with size comes another issue. Survivability. Right now, ships just don't feel very durable. For example, that's kind of the problem. These boats aren't really feared on the battlefield. They're surprisingly fragile, and because of that, a lot of players have simply stopped using them. The only time you really see them nowadays is when they're locked behind a paywall or some kind of gamble mechanic. And we're not even talking about the damage output yet, which also feels a bit underwhelming for something that's supposed to be a massive warship. When you combine the small scale, the low survivability, and the not-so-impressive firepower, it becomes hard to justify actually choosing a ship over other vehicles in the game. With some adjustments to scale, durability, and overall impact, ships could easily become one of the most exciting parts of the game again.